Hey, third grade. Let's talk about our purpose for reading today. I can identify the sequence of events in the story. This Edpuzzle is going to pause, and on the right-hand side of this page, you're going to write our purpose for reading. You're going to write the I can statement. I can identify the sequence of events in the story. Go ahead and do that. Now that you've written our I can statement, let's think about what sequence means. Sequence is a fancy word for order. Answer the question that pops up once this Edpuzzle video pauses. Now that we know sequence is a fancy word for order, let's look at how we identify the sequence. How do I identify the sequence of events? Well, I have to think of certain parts of the story as a reader. I have to think about a character and a character's actions, because the character's actions, or what they do and say, make up the events in the story, the plot. I have to think about the setting. Where is that story taking place? I have to think about the plot or the events. And they are told in the order they happen, because sequence is a fancy word for order. I have to think of how the plot takes place in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So I'm going to use the characters and the setting to sequence the beginning, middle, and end. We have been doing this in reading using a graphic organizer. Let's look and see what that graphic organizer looks like. Here is the graphic organizer that we use to help organize our sequence of events. We think about the character, the setting, where are the characters in the story, where are the events taking place. We think about the beginning, and remember, we always use the characters in the setting to sequence the beginning of the text. Then we think about the middle of the text, and again, we think about the characters and the setting to sequence the middle events. Then we think about the end, and we still use the characters and the setting to sequence the end of the text. So with that said, our purpose today is I can identify the sequence of events in a story. This question is going to help us identify the sequence of events. What happens at the beach? We are going to reread this familiar text at the beach. And as we reread, there will be questions that pop up on the right-hand side of this Edpuzzle. And those questions will help us to sequence the events in the text. As we reread this text, let's be thinking about what is happening at. Who are our characters? Where is the setting? And what is happening in the beginning of the text? Go ahead and start rereading the text. Now that we have reread page 2 and 3, let's answer who the characters are. Now that we have answered who the characters are, let's think about our setting in the beginning of this text. Now that we have answered the characters and setting, let's think about what's happening in the beginning of this text. Let's read on. Let's pause here to reflect on who the characters are, where the setting is taking place, and what is happening at the beginning of this text. Now that we have answered the characters, setting, and what is happening at the beginning of this text, let's go back to our graphic organizer. I love graphic organizers because they help me as a reader to organize my thinking. I still want to use complete sentences. So I'm going to identify my character or characters. We have Papa, Sam, and Jessie. I want to identify our setting, at home and at the beach. Now I want to use my characters and my setting to sequence the beginning of the text, to order the beginning of the text. At home, there's my setting. I'm including that in my sequence. Papa asked Jessie and Sam. I'm including my characters' names. I'm not just saying he or she because I have to introduce them first. Papa asked Jessie and Sam to go to the beach, but Jessie wanted to finish his shark book. So when I'm sequencing these events, I'm including the setting and the characters, and so what about the characters? Let's go back to the text and read on to see who our characters are in the middle, where the story is taking place, and so what about the characters? Let's read on. All right, third grade, let's pause here. Who are our characters? Where is the setting? And so what about the characters? Let's sequence the middle of this text. Let's check our thinking. So we have the beginning, and we're including the character and setting in our sequence of the beginning. At home, Papa asked Jessie and Sam to go to the beach, but Jessie wanted to finish his shark book. When Jessie and Sam got to the beach, so again, we have our characters and we have our setting. Sam went in the water but Jesse was too scared to go into the water. Jesse thought a shark would get him. So not only do we have the characters and the setting, but we have so what about the characters? Sam went in the water. Jesse was too scared because he thought a shark was going to get him. Now let's read on so that we can sequence the end of the story. Let's pause here, third grade. Thinking about our characters in the setting, let's sequence the end of the text. What happens at the end of the text? Let's check our thinking. Remember, we always include the characters in the setting to write our complete sentence when we sequence our events. Then we think about, so what about the characters? At the end of the story, Jesse went in the water. Sam pretended he was a shark and grabbed Jesse. Jesse and Sam played sharks the rest of the day. So we have our characters, Jesse and Sam. We have the setting in the water, and we have so what? Well, Jesse got over his fear and he ended up going in the water, and they played sharks the rest of the day. Now, let's read our text, Andy Fox at School. With the purpose, I can identify the sequence of events in a story. This question will help focus your brain when sequencing the events. What happens to Andy Fox? Now it's your turn. You're going to reread the text, Andy Fox at School, and you are going to then, on Seesaw, sequence using the character, setting, beginning, middle, and end. Go ahead and reread Andy Fox at School, thinking about the sequence of events. What happens to Andy Fox? All right, third grade, pause here and think about who are the characters. Now think about where is the setting taking place. Now that you have identified the characters and the setting, use the characters and setting to sequence the beginning of the text. Let's read on to think about the characters and setting, and so what about the characters in the middle of the text? Okay, third grade, let's pause. Who are the characters that showed up again and again in the middle? Now that you've identified the characters, where is the setting taking place? Now that you've identified the characters and the setting, use the characters and setting to sequence the middle of the text. So what about these characters in the middle of the text? Let's read on to sequence the end of the text. Now that we have finished the text, let's think about the characters and setting. And so what about the characters at the end of this text? You will now go on to your seesaw and you will sequence the events of Andy Fox at school.